The wild card enters Major League Baseball. What a way to pump up the playoffs. Go Sports presents on the daily. Cole Johnson on the mic on the Daily Song Tap presented by Cole Sports. And if you haven't done so already, like this video and comment because I want to hear what you have to say. If you want me to talk about certain topics or any other topics, please comment below. And then don't forget to hit the notification bell and subscribe to this channel. And I'm so glad that I'm here. It's Thursday. It's one of my favorite days of the week and one of my favorite segments to do because it's nice to take a trip back. Throwback Thursday, we have to go back in time and talk about some sports history. That's just how we roll here at Cole Sports. And on the daily, it's always every Thursday, and there's no shortage of that as well here because we are now in the month of October, and normally in the month of October begins the baseball playoff season. And even in this pandemic-shortened 2020 season, it is that way as well, even now. But I wanted to talk about what has been in the past and seeing the different style of playoff this year, and I'll talk about this later in the episode, versus other years. It made me think back as to when the current playoff system started. And that's what we October 1st, 1995. Now, we witnessed a lot in baseball during that year. I mean, we dealt with a strike ending. We dealt with a celebration that we haven't seen since, or at least the type of celebration we haven't seen since, because Cal Ripken, the shortstop slash third baseman of the Baltimore Orioles, became MLB's Iron Man, surpassing Lou Gehrig. And that was in the previous month, September. And we also saw the rise of new names, not necessarily rookies. They've been in the league for a bit, but we were starting to see certain names that were leaving the sport, and we were seeing other names who were becoming the preeminent images of the sport. Players such as Randy Johnson, players such as Barry Bonds, players such as Ken Griffey Jr. But none of that mattered as much as seeing the unveiling of the National League and American League wildcards. All right. To give it its proper setting, I have to explain how baseball's playoff system has been ever since, 1869? Now, baseball always awarded division champions. They always awarded those who were the top of the divisions. It's been that way ever since the sport began. I mean, they believed, like Ricky Bobby and Talladega Nights, that this is really how they believed. Quote, if you're not first, then you're last. Close quote. And for a long time, that is how baseball was. I mean, you had your two leagues, the National and the American League, and each league had only one division. They played it out from April to the end of September. Whoever was the top of each league met in the World Series early October. They duked it out, and that is how they decided their world champion. And that was the case until around the 1960s, when you started to see teams come almost out of the woodwork, and you started to see expansion take shape, and you started to see expanding teams and game presence, to the point where in 1969, when baseball that year went to 24 teams, it would be 12 in each league, and they decided each league to have two divisions in each league. one in the East, one in the West, both in the American and National Leagues. So, of course, having it now have two divisions in the league, then you had the beginning of what they called the American and National League Championship Series. And the two teams would duke it out, best of five. Whoever came out of that met in the World Series. And that's how it was until supposedly 1994. And of course, you knew what happened then. A wonderful season that was supposed to be, I guess you could say, culminated with an extra playoff round gone because of labor strife. And of course, August of that year, you had a home run chase that was divine. You had a guy in Tony Gwynn who was about to hit for 400, and we didn't get a chance to finish the season. Now, I'll talk about the 1994 Major League season as a whole at another time. So what was meant to be in 1994 actually came to be the year after. Now, this was the first time Major League Baseball decided to have wildcard teams in baseball. Now, just because this was the first time that we had wildcards did not mean that this was the first time we were introduced to what we now call, in the very first round of the playoffs, this incarnation of baseball, the divisional series. No, the first time that happened was 1981. And why did it happen? It was a strike shortened season that year. Funny how labor strife makes all these changes for the game, but I digress. So that year was deciding the winners of each division during the halves of the year, because the strike happened halfway through the season, like if I'm not mistaken, June or July. So you had a first half and then you had a second half. You had a first half team that won, that was first place at the end of when the streak started. And you had the first place team that ended the season. Those two teams went to square off in the best of three in the divisional round. Now, how it went then was in the AL West, you had the A's and the Royals go at it. In AL East, you had the Yankees and the Brewers go at it. In the NL East, it was the Expos and the Phillies. In the West, it was the Astros and Dodgers. Now, the A's swept the Royals, so it wasn't really a contest there. The AL East, that was a monumental struggle. That was a monumental struggle. It was wonderful to see how that went. I'm sorry, best of five. I'm sorry. It was wonderful how to see how that went. That went 5. The Yankees beat the Brewers 3-2, and of course they went on to be the American League rep in the World Series. The Expos and the NL got revenge the year before on the Phillies, beating them 3-2 and advancing to the NLCS. They met up with the Dodgers, who also got a measure of revenge the year before against the team that dethroned them for the NL West Championship in 1980 in the Astros. Again, 3-2. The Dodgers ended up being the Yankees in 6 to claim the World Series that year. Fast forward 14 years later, and we saw the return of the division series. Now, the first 2 wildcard teams in MLB history, and I guess you can answer this as a trivia question. In the American League, it was the Yankees. Who else? In the National League, it was the Rockies. Yes, the expansion-ish, because the expansion stench was wearing off on the team. They were the first ever wildcard team. Now, the Yankees paired off against the upstart Mariners, who had Edgar Martinez and this guy named Aaron Rodriguez. Yes, A-Rod. A-Fraud. And, of course, King Griffey Jr. and their ace was Randy Johnson. The big guy and the big gun and the big bat for the Yankees was Don Mattingly during the time. The Rockies opposed the Braves, and they ruled the National League ever since 1991, and they ruled it for the exception of 1993. But they were up top. They were on top of their game. I mean, they had the pitching staff that was to die for, and they were in their prime during this time period. Now, the non-wild card team playing the teams, I should say, playing in the divisional round games, they were the Sox, the Red Sox. I mean, they won the AL East that year. They played the AL Central champs, the Indians, and in the NL, it was the Central champs, the Reds, and the West champs, Dodgers. Now, how that went, the Reds swept the Dodgers and the Indians swept the Red Sox. Now, as for both wildcard teams, they didn't really fare so well. I mean, the Rockies got bounced in 4 to the eventual world champion Braves. And the Yankees, not only did they push the Mariners to 5, but they had a lead in the 9th inning in Game 5 in the now torn down Kingdome when the Mariners went to work, rallied, and bounced the Yankees out the playoffs, meaning the Indians in the ALCS. Now, that year, the Braves won against the Indians, and they claimed their, which is amazing with that team, their lone World Series championship. Now, sometimes innovations are not just necessarily good for the product. Sometimes. In this case, however, having a wild card come out of each league to balance out the playoff scheduling was actually one of the greatest things Major League Baseball ever created, because it was a wonderful thing they did. In one instance, they gave a chance to have another race unfold. Now, it's not necessarily we just simply look at the 6 divisions. We now look at the 2 wild card races that are taking place at the same time. So it gives you another focus, and it gives the players, I guess, another focus too. And since we've had this, we've had wonderful remembrances of wildcard teams play. And the success of the wildcard race has produced now what they have done in the recent years, a winner-take-all game in a wildcard game between 2 wildcard teams played at the higher record earner ballpark. And they would go on to play whomever in the NL and ALDS. Now, the beauty of it all is if the defending champion, the beauty of all of this actually is now we are at a time where the defending world champion was a wild card. The Washington Nationals, yeah. I mean, they came from behind in the play-in game, the bottom of the 8th against the Brewers at home. Then they came back from a 2-1 series deficit against the Dodgers and had a monumental home run in the 8th inning tie, and then they broke it open in the 10th inning in Game 5 to eliminate the Dodgers in the NLDS. They swept the Cardinals in the NLCS. Then they took the Astros on and really took the Astros' best shot in the World Series, falling behind 3-2 and then beating the brakes off the ALO champs in both games 6 and 7. In fact, Strasburg pitched a masterful game in Game 6. So if you want to know the success of the wild card in baseball, just look at the Washington Nationals. I mean, that's the best way to gauge the success of a wild card, because they knew that they couldn't beat the Braves that year, but they still had something to fight for. And they had a slow and sluggish start, but then they caught fire during the summer, and then they built momentum and built more momentum and built more momentum to the point where they were literally the hottest team in Major League Baseball. And sometimes the winner is not necessarily the best team as much as it is the hottest team at that moment. So if you want to know the success of wild cards in baseball, just look at a team like the Washington Nationals from 2019. and you have your answer. Now, which wildcard team is your favorite from Major League Baseball? I want to hear what you have to say. Like this video, comment below because I want to see teams from the wild card that really inspired you. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell to get any and all premieres of any content of On the Daily and Another Thing and any other show coming from this channel. Thank you so much for this trip back in time. I am Cole Johnson, and this has been yet another installment of Cole Sports on the Visual and On the Daily.